2, 1.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Eskin on behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training. It's my privilege to welcome you to number 34 in our nonprofit empowerment webinar series. This one's Tell It to Harvey. And in San Antonio in the nonprofit sector, you don't have to say much more than Harvey. And we are just so excited to have as our special guest, Harvey Najum, who is the founder of the Najum Charitable Foundation. He really doesn't need much of an introduction, so I'm going to take 2 pages. Harvey is okay, distill it into 2 paragraphs. Since he established his family foundation in 2006 and since 2007, between his personal and foundation philanthropy, he has provided approximately $140 million to charities and nonprofits in the region. And those of you who are listening, this is something to be excited about. He is committed to contributing another $250 million to good causes over the next 10 years. And one of the best things about Harvey, about his impact, it doesn't stop with his gifts. He's a true partner with nonprofits. He gets his hands dirty and he makes sure that we all achieve the strongest possible results with the gift dollars that are made available. Harvey, I'm going to call on you for some opening comments of around 10 minutes or so, and then we're going to explain the special format that is unique to the show. It's going to be all about Harvey listening and talking with nonprofit leaders. So Harvey, how is your family doing as a starting point?
Good, Jim, thanks.
And the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, Jim, thank you for the introduction. Before we start the Q&A today, I thought I would share with you my perceptions and comments about the pandemic. Last April, I watched Mark Cuban on the Texas Business Hall of Fame give a speech, and what he said, these are his words, not mine. We're currently in America 2.0 versus 1.0 in February of this year. So the pandemic has changed everything. But before we begin the Q&A session, I just want to give you my perception of the pandemic on where we are today and the future. I am very concerned that 2021 will be just like 2020. So let's get started. First of all, the United States has 4% of the world's population. There are 20 countries in the world. We have 4% of the world's population. We have 21.5% of the cases and 19% of the deaths. Those are not good numbers. In fact, they're very bad. Excuse me, Jim, I got a problem. Hello? Yes. I'm gonna have to call you back, I'm sorry. So let's take a look at how other countries are doing. And I'm gonna list you 9 countries, including the United States. I'm gonna give you the population and the deaths. Let me first start out with the United States, 330 million people, 271,000 deaths. Thailand, 70 million people, 60 deaths. South Korea, 52 million people, 526 deaths. Japan, 126.5 million people, 2,109 deaths. The US had that many, more than that last night. Israel, 9 million, 2,877. China has 1.4 billion people. They're 4.25 times the United States, 4,634 deaths. That's 2 days of deaths in the USA. Canada, 38 million people, 12,287 deaths. Iran, 82 million people, 49,000 deaths. Mexico, 126 million people, 107,000 deaths. And the United States, again, 330 million people, 271,000 deaths. So you're probably wondering why. Well, in some of these other countries, like Thailand, South Korea, Japan, Israel, China, when they are told to do something, they're very subservient and they do what they're told.
Hmm.
I mean, you can read history books about that. And so I just think it's sad that we're the greatest country in the world, but yet we have the worst numbers. Our hospitals are packed. We still don't have proven medical care available that can cure someone once they get COVID. While we're close to having a vaccine, I believe it'll take 2 to 3 years to vaccinate 330 million people, because it's not one vaccine, it's 2 vaccines that are absolutely 3 weeks apart. And many people, I'm guessing 25 to 30%, will choose not to take a vaccine. And for those that don't, and for those that are asymptomatic, I think the virus will continue to spread. I don't think we will ever go back to America 1.0 in the near term, and that's 3 to 5 years. Hopefully we can go back to America 1.5. The pandemic has changed everything. Many employees are working remotely. Many people are unemployed. San Antonio probably has 50,000 plus people that are unemployed today. 120,000 people are being fed by the food bank. There's no face-to-face meetings. At least I don't go to them. No fundraising luncheons and galas, which are definitely affecting most of you. No eating out in restaurants unless you're brave. Not going to church. Only 30% of our children are in classrooms today. Racial protests and riots. And we have a highly contested election. And unfortunately, we have a president who has not accepted the fact that he has lost the election. But that's another conversation to have. And I have to blame part of what's happened in the United States is that the federal government, and in particular the president, did not take the pandemic seriously. He didn't listen to the medical experts, the Center for Disease Control, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx. And I can assure you, when President-elect Biden takes the oath of office, within 24 hours, the United States will have a national mask mandate. So we all need to get ready for that. So now let's talk about my foundation a little bit and kind of what's changed. In January, my executive director and I sat down and we said, you know, this is how much I think we'll be able to give out during our 3 grant cycles. These are the 17 program areas. They haven't changed. This is approximately how much we'll give out in each program area. And my donor advised fund will be used for capital, and that's how much will be given out. So we agreed on that back in January. But by April 1st, that all changed. And we have spent, and most of it came from my donor advised fund, over $2.6 million on COVID-related support. That support went basically to 2 major places. 2 million of it, 1 million went to the food bank. And when the mayor and the county judge locked the city down, the mayor and judge asked me to chair one of the 5 working groups for the city and the county. It was called the Philanthropy Working Group. So I built a very strong team. I had most of the EDs from the foundations on it, USA, Valero, Mace Foundation, et cetera, et cetera. And real quickly in April, when I saw the April 10th video of the 10,000 cars the food bank was trying to feed, and I think most of you saw that because it went viral, that I talked to Eric Cooper, and the food bank had asked the state for $12.8 million, and the state said that's too much. So Eric cut it to 9.6 million and the state gave him 2.8 million. He said that would only last him 3 days. So I decided to put together a telethon for the food bank, and it went over 30 to 33 hours, and we raised $5.4 million for the food bank, of which $1 million came from me personally. Another $1 million went to, and I have to give credit to the San Antonio Area Foundation and United Way, who put together a COVID relief fund, and they raised 6.4 million. The foundation and I gave $1 million to that, and they gave out 6.4 million to, I think, 205 different nonprofits. I'm sure some of you on the call received some of those dollars. So Jim has asked me for a couple of questions, and let me just share a couple of them with you real quickly, then I'll turn it back to Jim. How significant have the requests been coming to you, and have they increased since March? The only thing that has really been changed is most of the requests have been for higher dollars from the nonprofits to use the money for operations, since their revenues have declined. But for us, we focus on how well the application is written, how realistic their budget is, and what impact COVID has been. And we just are hopeful that you're honest with your revenues. And one of the nonprofits that submitted a grant to us, Eye Care of San Antonio, they sent me their regular budget, and then they sent me their COVID budget. They sent me their 2020 regular budget, 2020 COVID budget. So when I looked at it, the main thing that had decreased was revenues because of fundraising. We have not changed or updated our awarding criteria due to COVID. We have supported the Big Give Relief Fund. We did support the Big Give Fund. I gave $50,000 to United Way to use for childcare for essential workers since the schools were closed. And and one other thing I'll mention before I turn it over to Jim, and that is that I got a call from the Boys and Girls Club. Angie Mock called me, and she said, and I asked her, I said, what are you doing for COVID? And I was very impressed with what she told me, and I guess that's why she's the new publisher and CEO of the San Antonio Report. She said, I decided to change our mission statement. So we have a COVID mission statement, and I changed many of the job descriptions for our employees. And one other comment that I'll make, and then I'll turn it over to Jim. The summer slide is now in its 9th month. And it has really given us some severe consequences, because those same at-risk kids are suffering remote learning challenges due to the lack of adequate internet and technology. And unfortunately, most of the kids are being taught virtually, with only about 30% of the school's population actually in the classroom today. And most kids in elementary and middle school are failing in one or more subjects. And getting kids back to a grade level in reading, math, and science will take a long time. Not going to happen in 2 weeks or 2 months. It's going to take a year, maybe 2 years. I do not see kids in school 100% at the earliest till August of 2021, and probably not till January of 2022. So I'll turn it over to Jim, and we'll begin the question.
Okay. Well, Harvey, again, on behalf of the community, thank you for your leadership. I'm going to take a second to discuss this format. By the way, Harvey, Andrea brought this to my attention. You don't learn anything when you talk. So for the next 50 minutes, I'm going to be listening completely to Harvey and you, the nonprofit leaders. Harvey's favorite question is, as long as I know him, speaking directly to nonprofit leadership, what keeps you up at night? And we're going to be listening. So we'd like you to identify who you are, your role, your nonprofit. And then here are the ground rules. You can bring up any topic with one exception. This is an ask-free zone, no solicitations allowed. And again, we want to engage as many of you in the audience. So please try to keep your remarks to 1 or 2 minutes. And we're ready to begin.
All right, Jim, the first question is going to come from Jasmine Dean, and I just need her to pull her. There she is.
Hi, everyone. It is an honor to meet you, Mr. Najim, in this way. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Jim, for this opportunity. So because of you and a few others like you, San Antonio is rich with nonprofit work, significantly because of your example and your legacy of giving, your generosity, and your commitment to serving the San Antonio community. Because of this, you have made dreams into reality and life-changing needs realized. What advice do you have for newer nonprofits who might have started right before COVID, now embracing COVID as a part of their building strategy in terms of not just board capacity, but also appealing to the larger charitable foundations in San Antonio like yours?
Well, thank you, Jasmine, for the question. But Jim, can you kill the chart so we don't need them anymore?
Okay. Okay. John.
Just unshare your screen, Jim.
Okay.
I'm going to get you computer for dummies. I'll order it as soon as
Thank
I
you.
get off the
Hey,
phone.
by the way, Harvey, could you rush that? Okay.
So look, what is the name of your nonprofit, Jasmine?
Celebrate Dyslexia.
Okay. Unfortunately, you started at not a very good time. I happen to think we have too many nonprofits that do the same thing. Okay. And as I listened to Graham Weston today at the Rotary Zoom call, Graham talked about, you know, what his beliefs are when he looks at doing something. And I love what he said because it's what I believe. He said, I want to make sure it's doable.
Mm-hmm.
So my advice to you is keep the programs and your offerings and the services that you provide to people that need those services. Make sure they're doable. Make sure it's feasible, believable, and achievable and doable. And there's a lot of donor fatigue right now out in the community because of, you know, the United Way campaign is finalizing right now. The money that went to the food bank where I worked the phones for 2 solid weeks, the San Antonio Area Foundation funding, et cetera, the big give, I could go on and on. Yesterday was Giving Tuesday. It just doesn't seem to stop. So I hope that helps. Just, you know, make sure that your grant request, what I like, there's a foundation called the Robin Hood Foundation. You can go to robinhood.org. They're located in New York, and they have a manual there. What the Robin Hood Foundation does, they say, if we give you $1, show us that it turns into $10 to $12. So use statistics and metrics, Jasmine, to make sure that if you get a grant for $25,000, that you're going to have metrics that show it's going to give back maybe $200,000 to $250,000. Make sense?
It does. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine.
All right. The next question is going to come from Charlotte Ann, and I'm going to pull her up.
You got 2 on there, John, but neither one of them have a picture. So, and it looks like Kathy's is muted.
Charlotte Ann, are you,
Yeah, I'm here.
okay, she's here.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, we're coming in just audio.
Yeah.
No, Charlotte, Ann, can you come on screen?
I think my video's on. John, I don't see it.
John,
Let's
can
see.
you allow her on, please?
I sure can.
Or if not, we'll just go audio. We'll give you 10 seconds.
Go ahead, Charlotte. With your
Yeah, go ahead,
question.
Charlotte.
Okay. So as you were talking, I realized that, you know, you said exactly what's been on my mind, which is that this has been a really, really, really difficult year. Most of all for the families who have lost their jobs or who have lost loved ones due to the virus, but also for those of us who care very deeply about this community and I'm not sure why my
We can hear you.
anyway, that's okay. You talked about that iconic photo of the lines of cars at the food bank, and I will never forget that as long as I live, you know. And there's the rub. My nonprofit news organization is not the food bank. We do things they don't do, things that still matter, like we created a mobile-friendly map of the hundreds of places that the kids in poverty can find free meals while the schools are closed for COVID. But I can't compete with the food bank for donations, and I don't want to. But trustworthy information is also a core community need. What suggestions do you have for the rest of us on how we should be communicating with donors against this backdrop?
Well, thank you, Charlotte, for the question. I got to be honest with you. The biggest need that I see right now is because people are unemployed, they cannot pay their rent or their house payments or their car payments or utilities, and they can't buy food. And if they buy food, they may not be able to pay their utilities, and their utilities get shut off. United Way has a 211 hotline. I'm a former board. I'm on the board of United Way. I'm on the executive board, former campaign chair in 14, former board chair in 16 and 17, and I chaired the Bexar County Children's Agenda. And I think what you have to be able to do is make sure that when you talk to funder about the programs and the services that the nonprofit that you have offer are solving problems today that are caused by the pandemic, which, as we all know, is job training is one, financial management is another, making sure that people who have lost their housing or lost their apartment have a place to live and so forth. And so don't try to compete with the food bank, because every day they're giving out 10 big truckloads, and I'm talking about 18-wheeler truckloads of food every day. So just make sure that your offerings are necessary, that they meet the required services. And the food bank told me that their top #1 call, and their calls have tripled since the pandemic started, is for food, shelter, and utilities. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but that's my perception on it. Thank you.
All right, the next question is coming from Sandy Holt.
There I am. Hi, Mr. Najim. It's a
Hi,
pleasure
Sandy.
to see you again today and hear all of the great advice that you're providing and what your observations have been in the community. My name is Sandy Holt, and I am the Chief Development and Marketing Officer for the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. We are a national organization. And one of the things that we have observed in the work that we're doing and what we've done in terms of COVID is have been providing small $500 awards as a relief opportunity for students, because what we've been observing is that many students either are being displaced if they were relying on housing at their respective campuses. Also mental health, and another one for first generation students and also low income students. Many of them may not have had the hardware necessary for them to do their work from home, as well as high speed broadband access. And some of them may be sitting outside of a Starbucks, et cetera, trying to finish their work. So we did establish a small program to be able to provide them with small relief funds. But my question to you is, I know that your foundation also contributes to the San Antonio Area Foundation for Scholarships. Have you seen that type of need from the students that are applying for the scholarship to be able to manage their higher education expectations as well?
Well, that's an excellent question, Sandy. And let me quote you something from a friend of mine who's president of Trinity University, is Danny Anderson. And Danny said in his magazine that I got that the COVID pandemic continues its inexorable march. Uncertainty reigns in our economy and down our political aisles. It continues to be a daily challenge to make meaningful connections with friends and loved ones. And the other thing that Danny pointed out that I mentioned in my opening comments, the racial injustices and structural inequities that taint our nation have shed light on similar issues within the colleges. The colleges are struggling right now. They're struggling because most of their education is virtual. And many of them, I know that Alamo Colleges is giving out some small awards like what you mentioned for the Hispanic organization. I know UTSA is doing that also. My alma mater, Wichita State University, is doing that too. And this is a difficult time, and many colleges have cut, their enrollment figures have dropped. Some of them have dropped by 20% or 30%. There's many areas that have been cut back. The airline industry, the movie theater industry, enrollment in colleges and so forth. There are some organizations that I think it's Resource Education and another one, the name escapes me right now, that are helping students with these small amounts of funds to make sure that they can put gas in their car, can have lunches and eat groceries. I know Alamo Colleges and UTSA both have pantries which the kids can come and visit. So hopefully that answered your question.
All right, the next question is from Nikisha Baker.
Hey, Nikisha.
Good afternoon, Mr. Najum. Good afternoon, Jim. Thank you both for this opportunity. There's no question that 2020 has been a year like no other, and particularly as it relates to fundraising. Briefly, SAM Ministries was behind on our budgeted revenue going into the COVID-19 pandemic, and then COVID hit and we were way far ahead on our expenses, but we were able to shift, as we are one of those nonprofits that is meeting that basic need of providing shelter and housing for vulnerable families and individuals. Toss into that mix a leadership transition, right? In the middle of a pandemic, a nonprofit whose CEO, who had been at the helm for 13 years, retired. So we dug in early on in the pandemic and really focused on back to basics, talking to our donors, engaging with our friends like Mr. Najum, talking about the increased need and those kinds of things. And we were able to pull out 2020. My question for you, Harvey, is as you have suggested, we're going to see the impact of this far beyond 2021. We're talking 2022. What advice do you give to, or would you give to nonprofits like us? Because we're continuing to ask friends like you, friends like the United Way, so many of our major donors over and over again to help us continue to meet this need. How would you encourage us to persevere? I'm scared that the donor fatigue is really going to get overwhelming come early next year.
Well, Nikisha, first of all, congratulations again to you on becoming the new CEO. You were my first, second, and third choice. I think you know that. And I'm proud of you and proud of the work that you're doing. Look, you got to make sure that your budget is feasible, believable, and achievable. It is realistic. Make sure that revenues exceed cost, even if it's just by $1. Look at all the programs and services that you offer and make sure that is there a return on all of the different services. And if you have some services that you offer and the calculation shows that there's not a return on it, return on the investment, then maybe you cancel that service offering if someone else is doing it. You know, I ran Sirius for 35 years as president, CEO, and chairman, and and while I miss Sirius, I'm kind of grateful today I'm not there having to deal with the pandemic in some respects. But if you can partner with someone else, because I think collaboration and partnership is really important. So if you can partner with someone else that offers this service, maybe you can cut your costs down and still offer that service. Hope that helps. If not, you've got my email and my cell phone, Nikisha, call me. John?
All right, the next question is from Deborah Martin.
Well, she's muted. There she is. Hi,
Hello,
Deborah.
Mr. Najim. Thank you. And thank you, Jim. Thank you for this opportunity. And thank you for the advice that you've been giving and for all that you do for our community and have done for so many years. Thank you. Thank you. My name's Deborah Martin. I'm with the Alamo Colleges Foundation. And Harvey, we are so grateful to you for your support of scholarships and wanted to follow up on your point about collaborating. Thank you for that. At Alamo Colleges, we are fortunate that students are continuing to enroll. And actually our individual numbers are up this semester. Students are taking a few less hours, but more students are coming for education. And we have partnered with the United Way and with the food bank to be able to provide some additional assistance to our students during this COVID time and their need for food and shelter and utilities and things like that. I'm not sure, I don't know a specific question. I think a lot of it has been covered. So I wanted to ask you, what's the most important thing that we should know about you?
Well, first of all, I'm 80 years old and I thought I'd be retired by now, but I get bored. I got bored last weekend. It was a 4-day weekend and I can't handle 4-day weekends. I got to be working. I'm very detailed. I love politics. I love watching sports, and I love watching CNN and some of the other things like that. So, you know, I just try to do what I can every day. Thanks, Deborah.
All right, the next question is going to be coming from Jean Mark.
Jean, can you hear us?
There we go. I had to unmute. Yeah. Hello, Harvey. Good afternoon. And but I wanted to tell you, I was in the crowd when you did the session with Jim over at the Microsoft store. Remember that afternoon? That was very good. Well, I think they're closed now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I wanted to ask. I'm a board member of the Bowen Center for Neighborhood Advocacy, and we've had a little attrition of board members during COVID. And I'm on 2 other organizations where at this time of the year where they normally have elections and so forth, it's kind of like, nobody wants, the new blood is not coming in, and it's in the vein of the board is sort of rolling themselves over, which is, slightly undemocratic, but that seems to be the way it is. What would you suggest for trying to recruit board members at this time and, restore that kind of new blood, which is needed?
Well, let me just share with you that in the last 4 months, I've added 3 new board members to my foundation. And I will tell you that it's the CEO's responsibility, along with the board chair's responsibility, to recruit new board members. But Gene, you need to find out, I would, if I were you, I would want to talk to people whose passion is what the organization is, that you want them to be on a board. And you might want to go to the companies that the different for-profit companies in San Antonio, like Valero, HEB, Newstar, AT&T, et cetera, who would love to, who encourage their employees to serve on a board, and maybe they can give you a name or two to recommend. That's what I think.
All right. The next question is coming to you from Don Gleason.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, Mr. Najim, and mega dittos on Jasmine Dean's comments and others about your support to the community. We really appreciate it. I won't repeat all that. But thank you for your time today, and to Jim for continuing to provide this forum. This has really been good. I'm president of Military Transition Roundtable. We serve transitioning military using the mastermind or roundtable concept. Our focus is helping military and spouses to not do transition alone by building a community of accountability around them and their spouses. We provide a forum for them to ask questions on the challenges and get peer and expert feedback so they walk through it together. We opened our doors in February 2020. We've been working with Jim, and he told us, he said, this is probably the worst time to start a nonprofit, but it was the right time for my partner and I. We've been running 3 cohorts this year of 8 to 10 people, with a plan next year of tripling that, having 9 by the end of next year. And we're doing an offsite this week. We're really getting started on our fundraising. Our COVID focus is helping military and spouses overcome their scarcity mindset. It holds them back from networking and building relationships. So they're just throwing a lot of applications out, but they're not really networking into companies. So my question, and thank you for expressing your criteria for selecting nonprofits for your foundation. My question is, with so many donors and challenges to developing a relationship with those donors, what's the best method to determine the criteria many of the donors use to decide their donation selection?
Well, for example, thank you for the question, Don. My foundation funds 17 different program areas, and there are more program areas than that that some nonprofits do. And I guess my advice to you is is to research each foundation, go to their websites. They all have good websites. I think ours is very good also. And make sure that before you submit a grant request, that you know that it's something that they will support. Because you don't want to waste their time or your time applying for something that may not support. For example, we're not big on the arts and the theater and museums, but we do support for low-income kids inside 410, excluding Alamo Heights. We do support visits to the theaters and the museums and the arts and the zoo and so forth, in order for them, and we pay for the bus trip, and we pay for their admission, and we pay for their lunch meal. So you got to find out what area everybody applies to, and the best thing is to have your development person do the research for you and find that information out. Thank you for your question.
Right. The next question is coming to you from Carl Miller Lugo.
And I know him quite well.
Hello, Mr. Najum. And,
Hey, Carl, how are you?
I'm doing great. When I knew you were going to be here, I had to be here. And Jim, thanks for this opportunity. And thank you, Jim, for what you do in supporting and championing our profession. By the way, I've been a big fan of all the things that I get from you. Harvey, it's again great to be with you, and I've enjoyed listening and learning so much from also my other colleagues on this call. I'm fairly new to the community, so this has been good for me as a learning tool as well. And I had a list of questions, and they've asked a lot of them. So what I wanted to do here is follow up on something you said about the collaboration and cooperation. And thinking about the university and its depth and breadth and everything that it can bring, what advice would you give to me in providing leadership at the university in partnering more fully with the community, with many of these nonprofits that are featured here today and others?
Well, Carl, thank you for the question, and hope you and your family had a great Thanksgiving. You and I haven't talked since then.
I know. Thank you.
I'm tired of leftover turkey and ham right now. That's an excellent question. And I will tell you that, it's a lot of the nonprofits that we support focus on education. In fact, education, I could send you a list of the areas that we focus on. And whether it's come from the foundation, me personally, or from my donor advice fund, education ranks either first, second, or third in all those categories. And included in that is early childhood education, is out of school time, because I think out of school time is really important. If these kids don't have anywhere to go for out of school time, and they don't have anyone like the Boys and Girls Club or San Antonio Youth or the City Year or After School All-Stars to help them, then they may not want to go to college, because no one has said, hey, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you're right. So it's convincing them to think that they can and encouraging them to want to go to college. So that's one area I think you could collaborate with. This conversation would probably is kind of more involved. So why don't you and I cover the rest of this offline? You've got my cell and I've got yours. We'll talk later. Thanks.
All right.
John?
The next question is from Tracy Lajinsky.
Hello, everybody. Greetings, Mr. Najim, and hello,
Hi,
Mr.
Tracy.
Eskin.
How are you?
Good.
I am well, sir. Our paths haven't crossed in a while. I miss
I
seeing
know.
you. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you. So just like our last speaker, most of my questions have been answered, although I do have several for you. But one of the things, Mr. Najim, that you mentioned earlier was the philanthropy working group that you put together.
Yes.
We have, well, sorry, let me back up real quick. My name is Tracy Lajinsky. I am the Vice President of Mission Advancement for Catholic Charities. The Catholic Charities family, as you all may or may not know, we are actually 5 nonprofits under the umbrella of Catholic Charities. We are 5 unique nonprofits. So Catholic Charities, St. PJ's Children's Home, Seton Home, San Antonio Birth Doulas, and Guadalupe Community Center. Mr. Najim, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for the funding that you provide for us each and every year. You make such a difference in our community. Our kiddos are coming from trauma, single family homes, and more than likely are coming from some seriously disadvantaged zip codes. So thank you for that. COVID for us has been really a challenge. One of the things that we did, we think well, was to turn our after school program into an out of school time program. So our after school program is located across the street from Linear High School in the 78207 zip code. So we knew that after school, we were working with kiddos, again, single family homes, food insecure. Probably if they went home after school, we're not going home to a house that had an adult, a grown up, no supervision. And sometimes the grown-ups who were there were not acting like grown-ups. When COVID took kiddos to an out of school time learning, we pivoted to receive those kiddos all day at Guadalupe Community Center instead of just after school. So instead of being a 3 to 6 everyday program, we went from 8 to 6. And so in doing, we were able to make sure those kiddos were fed every single day. Not only did they receive meals and snacks from us, we sent them home with a bag of groceries if they needed them. We made sure they had technology. Most importantly, we made sure to keep them safe, that they had mentors and help with their homework. So thank you for all you did to support that. So my question, Mr. Najim, you referenced your philanthropy working group earlier in the call. We have been fortunate to have received COVID funding, and we're making things happen. My director of grants is curious, with those folks that you brought around the table with your philanthropy working group, do you all anticipate that the philanthropic sector will significantly change next year? And this kind of speaks to what we've talked about already, donor fatigue and funding priorities. In other words, should we buckle up for 2021 that might look a little bit differently in terms of funding than 2020 did? That's my professional question. My personal question is, have you read any good books lately?
Thank you. Well, Tracy, thank you for your question. First of all, the philanthropy working group that was put together was one of 5.
Okay.
The other 4 working groups were chaired by either a city council member or a county commissioner. The philanthropy working group was the only one who wasn't a politician, and I don't want to be a politician. It was, we operated the working groups during the months of March, April, and May, and then the mayor and the county judge decided to shut them down the 1st of June. So they were shut down as of that time. I don't think the philanthropy group is going to change much next year. The market this year had its ups and downs. And I'll tell you that from a low on the foundation's assets, we were down maybe 20%, and we made that plus some because November was just an incredible month in the marketplace. The market was up good. And why do I say talk to you about the market? Because the market, if the market is up, then we have more money with which to give out because it's a percentage of what we have. So hope I answered your questions. If not, you've got my email. Email me, Tracy.
All right, the next question is coming from John Schwab.
Hey, I didn't put my name on the list, but Merry Christmas, Harvey. Somehow I got popped up. I got promoted. I'm not sure, but
Well, you're one of my favorite people, John. You know that. You even asked me to be your friend on Facebook last night.
I saw that, man. That's really cool. Did you look at my Harvey? Look at my Facebook. Something happened in our family's lives. You need to check it out. Okay.
I'll check it out.
I want you to. You will understand. God bless you, Harvey. Jim, it wasn't me. I don't know what happened. Somehow I got promoted. So
It's okay. You're doing
my
well.
screen just went blank and then it popped up and there I was. So
what's your question, John?
Yeah.
I do not have a question for you, Harvey. I just, I can follow up with what they were talking about, the food bank, that you can't compete with those items. There's just no way to do that. But, it's been difficult for the last 39 weeks that we've had to provide services as essential personnel. It has been heart-wrenching and difficult, and we have individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities that have been sequestered to their homes for all these months, and it's been very, very difficult. And we are looking forward to a new year and things moving on. Okay, but we appreciate what you do, Harvey. We really do. Look forward to talking to you next week, man.
All
Thanks,
right.
John.
Thanks, John.
Did we have Sarah waiting?
Sarah was there and she popped off for a second. Let me see if I can pull her back.
Or early on, I saw Kathy Meyer, by the way.
Yeah. The next one in the queue is Kim Jeffries. Let me pull her
Okay,
up.
okay, sure.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Hi, Harvey. How are you?
Good, Annie. How are you?
I'm good. So I have a question that kind of touches on something that you talked about earlier, where you feel like there might be too many nonprofits doing things. It's very difficult for us as nonprofits to approach the issue of merger with another nonprofit because you have boards. And so what advice would you give to those of us who feel like we might have the opportunity, might have the infrastructure, the financial stability to have merger discussions with other nonprofits about approaching that nonprofit and their board? And my part B of my question is, what role do you think the funders could play in helping us do that?
Well, that's a good question. And let me give you a little background. In 18 years at Sirius, I did 17 acquisitions. But it's different, Kim, in the for-profit world because, first of all, there's some cost savings, and the cost savings also apply in the nonprofit world. You need one CEO, not two, one CFO, one HR person, one IT, et cetera, one headquarters facility, et cetera. But in order, and so you have some cost savings and salaries there. But the thing that made it work for us is that I gave stock options whenever I bought a company to the top people, and I made a lot of people millionaires. And so I think the pandemic is going to force these conversations to have organizations that have very similar missions to join together. And but the problem comes from who's the CEO? Do you take all the board from one and all the board from the other and put them together? So you got 11 here, 11 here, you got 22. And who's the CFO, who's the HR person, et cetera. Kim, we probably ought to have this conversation over a cup of coffee, and we can talk about the rest of it later because I think we had another one coming up, Jim.
Right. How about we have time? Marion, how would you like to be the last question? I'm going to see if I can surprise Harvey and get the slides back. But Marion, would you like to go ahead? Marion? John, can you unmute Marion?
She's unmuted. She's open to unmute. Let me go to someone else real quick.
Okay, good, please.
Jim, you need to kill those slides. I think it's,
Okay,
please.
okay. We got Al Hartman next if we can't get Marion on.
Al, you're available? Everyone's gotten shy here at the end.
Al, you have to unmute your microphone.
All right.
There you go.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Najin, thank you for your comments, and
Thank you, Al.
and certainly thank you for your leadership in the nonprofit world here in San Antonio. And Jim has pointed out that there's something like 6,000 nonprofits here in San Antonio, and competing basically all for the same dollar. Can you begin a process of encouraging nonprofits to reach out to one another and see where you can, in fact, consolidate activities? How many nonprofits are there in San Antonio that are trying to take care of puppies? And how many are trying to take care of flowers and trees? And perhaps you could create some sort of program to lead nonprofits into a consolidation, and where that, for instance, also, I mean, I use an example of school districts. We have, what, 13 or 14 school districts in the area. That means it's 13 or 14 superintendents. And as you pointed out, that's could be a vast saving, but do you think you could begin a program to encourage nonprofits to organize?
Well, Al, as I pointed out, I did 17 in 18 years at Sirius. I've tried to do quite a few since 2007, and so far I've done 0 in the nonprofit world. We actually have more school districts, Al, than you said. We have 17 school districts. Pre-K for SA is the 18th. There are half a dozen charter schools, and I think 1 or 2 more. So you got 25 school districts. But the key is, I think the pandemic will be forcing people to consider merging when they have very similar missions and they serve a part of the population that is very common. So it's not easy, but I know United Way, I've talked to Chris Martin at United Way, and United Way is interested in facilitating this also, because United Way has 4 areas that they focus on: children, successful students, individuals and family, and the other one being, I call it safety net, but they call it immediate needs. And on Sunday, I want to tell everybody there'll be a 2-page spread in Sunday's Express News that United Way is putting together. And I've seen the copy. I just looked at it a second ago. And it's going to list all the nonprofits by each one of these 4 areas that I just shared with you. So Al, it's big on my mind. It's big on a lot of people's mind. United Way and I think the Area Foundation both agree with me, and I think they would also be willing. I know United Way is willing to maybe help pay part of the legal fees that are involved in putting two together. So Al, thanks for your time, and Jim, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, and by the way, we ran right on schedule. First of all, Harvey, thank you for sharing the most precious gift of all, your time. I felt the hour just flew by. It was a rich discussion, and I'm kind of jittering on this. If it's okay, I'd like to correct one point you made.
Okay.
You describe yourself as 80 years old. I describe you as 80 years young.
No, thank you, Jim.
And thank you, Harvey, for your vision, your commitment, your leadership. You inspire the rest of us. I want to thank all our learning community partners. I thought it was a wonderful dialogue. And what we plan to do, we are going to do a quick posting on LinkedIn and Facebook in the next couple of minutes. But then John Largent, who's our CEO of Game Day Media and producer, he does a magic spin cycle. And we're going to post a complete recording of this that you can find on LinkedIn and Facebook. Oh, somewhere, John, say between 6:15 and 6:30.
Yes, sir.
And Harvey, thank you very much. It was a great hour.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. And you all stay safe.
All right.
See you next week.
Goodbye.